And we are back. More of the weekend edition of Community Focus. Thank you very much for tuning in, as always, to this very radio station every Saturday and Sunday morning. And, of course, family, with your great company, I also like to add the great company of members of our Community Focus family. Thank you for joining me, Renee Vaughn. And with me here in the studio is the author of the Divorce Prevention Guide, Marriage Without Divorce. It is so good to have the company of Minister William Edward Turner. As I mentioned earlier, William, how long, first of all, I mentioned at the top of the show, you're a native of Cincinnati, Ohio. You've been calling Greensboro, North Carolina home for how long?
Since June 12th. 2005.
Wow. So you've been here.
Yes, I've been here a little while.
You're a native now, I think,
yes,
as we can say. Now, I also mentioned earlier, you're a singer and songwriter with BMI. How did that come about? Because you sound like you would have a lovely singing voice.
Why, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That came about because I was, a songwriter, or trying to be a songwriter, right, when I was in Ohio and went to the Conservatory of Music, other than my other classes that I was taking, took all these classes, learned how to write a song, and they came out like garbage. So one day when I started dedicating my life to Christ, God put a song in my spirit. So I wrote it down, thinking, oh, it's nothing, and it just stayed in my head and rang out. And then all of a sudden, they would come and they would be like, in 5 minutes, you got a song written down.
Wow.
And then I was with a male men's praise team, and we began doing the songs. So then it involved doing the copyright and getting them listed and royalties and all that other kind of stuff that goes with that.
So you really know the ins and outs of the industry.
Yes. Yeah. You have to learn the paperwork side.
Right, exactly.
Because if you don't learn the paperwork side, you'll be doing like many of the artists of the past and finding your song somewhere else, and you're not getting anything out of it.
Exactly.
Including not the praise or the name recognition that you wrote it.
Oh, all the stories we could share here on this very radio station. So for all the young persons listening, know that you're listening to a man of experience. William, you have been there and done that, as the saying goes. But so happy to have you here on our Public Affairs show, because the Divorce Prevention Guide, Marriage Without Divorce, as I mentioned earlier, really incorporates learning God's principles for marriage success and the secrets of success from happily married couples. But we also want to add, and I'd like to share with our listeners this morning, William, and to have you expound on this a little bit, a portion of the profits of the book do go to the YWCA domestic violence shelter programs.
Right. One of the things that I realized when doing the book is that in a lot of situations, marriages don't turn out. And then usually the male can kind of work things out and kind of make it. But if it's a violent situation, the male usually doesn't talk about it. He goes somewhere and does whatever he's going to do. Okay. But for the woman, they're usually trying to escape the situation with their children. And there's a lot of agencies that do counseling and legal work. Right. But my feeling was, if they don't have a place to go, then there is a problem, because they need a place to go. And I felt that, okay, if God's going to bless me, I need to bless others. And this was one of the many areas in which I decided that God would lead me in blessing others.
And that ties in very nicely, William, with asking this next question, because when we really think of where the true source of seeking that guidance and that success for a marriage is, what are God's foundation principles for a successful marriage? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Probably one of the number one foundational principles God has is two must agree. And you can't have any relationship of any kind if you don't agree. And then secondly, you have to have a standard to live by. And that standard to live by is the Word of God. And then after that, it comes issues like forgiveness, what really is love, patience, and communication.
Exactly.
And one of the things is that all of those are wrapped in communication, because without the communication about knowing what God is saying to you, and without the communication of you two agreeing, none of the rest of the stuff can happen.
It's like mixing the right ingredients, if you will. You put it in a mixing bowl and you have all the key ingredients together, knowing that you're going to make, shall we say, when it comes time to mix those ingredients, you know you're going to come out with something special.
You know, it's so interesting that you said that, because my pastor this past Sunday, Brian J. Pierce over at Mount Zion Baptist Church here in Greensboro, said about, he used an example about making a cake, that individually the ingredients, the flour and the butter, don't taste good together. But God mixes it all up together, puts it in the oven. See, that's the key thing. Oftentimes we have to go through that fire. But then when God brings us out, he lets us cool and we're looking good, and then he puts some icing on top of it. So that's what happens when you build a great marriage and you practice God's principles, that he makes it work and then puts some icing on the top of it. The joy, the love, the friendship, the communication that is better than anything that you could get at work or from anyone individually, because now you are bound with God and God says he's going to bless you. So you don't have to worry about anybody else blessing you.
And I think that really answered my next question, William. Why choose the Bible as a standard?
Well, that's exactly right. Because we choose it as a standard because it doesn't waver. You know, if the economy's up, the economy's down. If you got a lot of money, if you're poor, it's still the same. It doesn't change based upon, I don't feel good today, or I'm hurting, or I'm feeling very sad. You know, it doesn't change based on any of those things, and it's always the same. So, and it works for both sides. It doesn't say, well, I'm good for the males today, and I'm good for the females tomorrow.
Right.
It's, God is not a respecter of persons. He's always the same, and he gives you the information with love. He doesn't try to beat you up with it. Right. He gives it to you with love.
And that's another one of those key ingredients, is having that love and having that support, too, William. Let me ask you this question, too. Why does a person need to forgive prior to engagement?
You know, forgiveness is one of the things that I call the express way to happiness, because oftentimes we forgive everybody, but the person that we don't really forgive is ourselves. What we do is we say we forgave ourselves until we see something come up that, oh, that pop bottle came out the machine the same way that other one did when this great, awesome, terrible thing happened to me. And I can't forgive myself for that. And we pull it back down off the shelf because God is really like, hey, I forgave you that. But then we pull it back off the shelf and rationalize it and go through it again. But we need to get over those things. We need to get past those people, those situations, those things that happened, the jobs we didn't get, the person that we thought was going to be good for us that wasn't, you know, all those things that happen. And we need to forgive so that we have a clean slate to work on. And God does that. You know, one of the things I talk about, starting where you are, because we have to start where we are to develop where we're going to be. And sometimes you have to realize that, okay, maybe there's a few things that I got to really get rid of, you know, because I sent in 300 resumes to this company and they didn't offer me the job. But every time I'm always the second person who is the best qualified. You know, I've been the second person 12 times, but they never picked me. So, you know, we have to forgive the company, forgive ourselves, and then also realize that sometimes those hurts that we have are because we didn't trust God to believe he had something better. We wanted it our way.
And that brings to mind for me, William, and I like how you describe that. And it makes me think that we really are our own worst or harshest critics when we come down so tough on ourselves. But how wonderful we have a loving creator who looks at us and says, you know what? I always look for the best in you. I always look for the good in you.
Yes.
So how much so for us to do that for ourselves?
Yes.
If we have someone like God who is already looking past all the foolishness, looking past all of the bad things that we are the ones who rehash. Like you said, he forgets about it and moves on.
Right, right.
Another question I'd like to ask, and first of all, let me take this opportunity to say welcome. If you're just tuning in, what a conversation with a new member of our community-focused family, officially family now, and that is Minister William Edward Turner, joining me, Renee Vaughn, here on the weekend edition of Community Focus. We are in discussion on the Divorce Prevention Guide, Marriage Without Divorce, a book that William has written. And William, we touched on this key word earlier. I wanted to bring it back to the conversation, and that is communication. How can communication strengthen a relationship?
Well, communication, one of the things I talk about in the book is that communication is the river on which we travel. And on that river, you have all the things that we even compromised on to work out agreements, the hassles, the problems, the situations, the ups, the downs, the lows. And when we communicate, we're able to navigate that river without running into the banks. So therefore, we're able to go down the center of the river because we're communicating. We're saying that when you do this, it hurts me, or I don't understand. We're communicating. And I believe, and I say in some things that probably the radio programs that I've done before, is that you never, no matter what's going on, allow communication to break down. When you say, I'm not talking to you, what you've done is said that I don't want to be with you anymore. And that's the way it's conveyed, is that you're not talking to me. It would be better to say, hey, can we talk about this at a little later time, maybe in a couple hours or tomorrow morning?
Or after everybody has kind of cooled off and calmed down.
Exactly. Right. Which says another message is that I really care about your opinion, and I know this is a hot issue for you, and I really want to talk about it with you. So it shows that compassion and love and not negating you or throwing you away.
Right. Absolutely. Well, why ask yourself, why are you getting married? That's probably another key question that likely gets asked to you a lot of times, William.
Right. One of the things that I find is that oftentimes we get married for reasons other than what we should get married for. Right. We have these hidden motives behind us. The ones is that, okay, if I get married, I'm going to be financially better. If I get married, I can have free sex. All those different things that we don't talk about that are hidden, and looking at those aren't solid reasons for getting married. There's more to it than just those particular type of surface level reasons. There's more to it, and we need to look deep into why we're getting ready. I know one of the issues that always comes up to me is, having been single for a long time, is, do I want to share my space?
Yes. And I'm sure that came up quite a lot in a lot of the couples that you had a chance to interview. Right.
The sharing of space and even sharing of holidays. I remember sharing of holidays was one that oftentimes we don't talk about until we get to the holiday.
Right.
It's kind of like, oh, whose house we're going to? We're going over. My mama said we had to come over her house all the time. Well, when are we going over to my mama's? So then the in-laws are mad. You're upset with each other. And so you need to work that out in the beginning and say, okay, we're coming over here for this year. We're going here for Thanksgiving, there for Christmas. You guys are coming here for New Year's. This is what we're doing, Mother's Day, Easter, so-and-so, and all those different holidays that come up, because a lot of stress comes out, and you can eliminate that stress through just that communication issue and settling it ahead of time.
And that's that communication that not only during holidays, but really just about any occasion that comes up. That communication is definitely the key. Well, that brings me to ask you this next question, William. What is and what you refer to as a marriage encouragement network?
Okay, the Marriage Encouragement Network is you identify people that you can communicate well with that are in good, healthy, godly marriages. And what you do is you develop at least 8 people to deal with that you meet with, and y'all spend some time together. Usually I say about 6 to 8 hours together, just kind of communicating and getting to know each other. Because when you get married, you need a new social network. You need a new group of people that you can talk to. They can feed into you. And usually you find at least 1 or 2 out of the 8 couples that you may find I can confide in him or I can confide in her. You know, and I suggest women with women and men with men. You know, we don't want that cross thing going. It's like, why are you talking to him? You know, why are you talking to her? Those kind of things. We don't want that. But what happens is it allows us to share that issue of, he never puts the seat down on the toilet. You know, what do you do about that? You know, and just issues that seem so mundane and so simple when you're single that become monumental when you are becoming two, because what you're doing is merging two different lifestyles and together as one.
Right. And I was thinking the same thing. It's making those adjustments. You know, you have been so accustomed to doing things by yourself for a long period of time, and then you marry that individual, and you're right. It's the merging of two different lives coming together. But that's the importance of the merge, is making it to where it's part of that happily successful marriage.
Exactly, exactly.
Now, is this your first book that you have written, or is this part of a series?
This is not the first book. Most of the other books I've written were around discipleship, dealing with Sin Fast, which was dealing with fasting, not food, but fasting your attitudes and behaviors. Fighting Battles God's Way, which was dealing with why did God tell Saul to kill all the animals and the children and all this kind of stuff. And then God told me that I was the baby that needed to die of my different ways and things like that. But books that were basically related to discipleship and moving from, you weren't born holy, so how do we get over the things that we've already been practicing? What's
been the reaction thus far for this particular book, The Divorce Prevention Guide, Marriage Without Divorce?
I've been getting a lot of reaction, which gave me the decision to come up with the Courting Couples Marriage Success Forum, which is free and open to the public. It's June 6th at 10 a.m. on a Saturday.
I was going to ask. That was my next question. Okay. Good for you. You're one step ahead of me. I love it, because I was focusing on that day, and I did not mean to cut you off. But when you said June 6th, I was like, wait, it's here in my notes. I'm supposed to ask that question.
Okay.
But June 6th, and you said Guilford Crossing.
Guilford Crossing, right. It's 522 College Road in Greensboro. It's near Friendly Avenue. I guess you would say it's south of the college on Guilford College Road. Okay. And it's a time where people can come and ask questions. You know, we have a small presentation, but the majority of the program is dedicated to receiving and answering questions. It's a time to allow us to bond, to develop networks, to look at some of the things, you know, that we do. And other than the books, we also have the sort of the radio excerpts that, you know, so you can stick them in your CD player and listen to them while you're on the way, you know.
Hey, I can together as a couple.
Exactly. Right. Hey, we can practice this. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, what are some of the secrets of happily married couples?
I guess like the one I mentioned about holidays, but one of them I thought was pretty profound. And one of the couples said that they had to realize that they were both successful individuals. And celebrate each other's success. And in celebrating each other's success, it wasn't that one was better than the other, or one did greater things, or one made more money than the other, but the fact that we are doing things that benefit our family, that benefit us together, rather than looking at it as, you know, well, I'm president of this company, you know, and you're just this worker over here. You know, it was that whether you're the worker over there, I'm celebrating the job you do over there, even though I'm the president of the company.
So it's really looking at it from the standpoint of it not being a competition, but as husband and wife, we are complements.
Right. We are complements. Yeah. We are complements. And even it talked about in one of the successful couples was the fact that what they did was they came home after work, sat on the steps or in the solarium, had coffee, and they each talked about their day. And one of them was the fact that They didn't even understand what they were doing at each other's jobs, but they both learned to be quiet and listen rather than give advice and say what I would have done, or I wouldn't have done it that way, or criticize, but just allow each other to dump out today's stuff and get it off their chest. And then they were able to come together and be what they call the home team again.
That's it. I like that, the home team, because that really goes back to the importance of what you talked about earlier, William, in terms of the communication. Sometimes that's the one thing I think a lot of us just really look for in our partner, is finding that person that's willing to just listen.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So what a great opportunity. That is an excellent Q&A session. Now, do you recommend, and of course we're talking about couples here, but do you recommend single persons who perhaps are looking to get married at some point down the road to be a part of the event?
Definitely. I definitely want single individuals that are, and even if you're dating and you're not even thinking about marrying the person that you're dating, but even coming, because it's a thing that we need to get ourselves individually together. If we've forgiven the issues in our life, if we dealt with our past, if we've learned how to communicate before we get there, then it's going to make it much easier for the two to merge into one, because you understand, you have compassion from the other. One of the things that we've been dealing with is the fact that men listen different than women. Exactly. And understanding just that fact, you're not sitting there saying, well, why aren't you listening to me?
Absolutely. Now, how else, William, outside of the great information that you shared with us here on the weekend edition of Community Focus, outside of what's going to be taking place on June 6th with the Q&A session, how can individuals stay in continual contact with you?
Okay, first of all, they could go to the website and just go on Google, look up divorce prevention, and click on that and come to the website. There's a blog on there. There's some information about the blog. Matter of fact, there's a wedding vows things from one of the spoken word poets that everybody loves. I love it so much that I reposted it. But it's just how she conveyed how she wasn't ready, and she was waiting for a man of God, and how God got her ready to receive this man of God, and the things that she had to let go of her mind to allow God to let him come in. So it's those different things. You can communicate on the blog. You can go to Facebook and find Divorce Prevention Guide, or you can go buy the book at Barnes & Noble, and in it is information about how to reach us there as well.
So we have a lot of options and a lot of resources.
Yes.
Very good. Any closing thoughts or comments, anything that I may have missed that I didn't mention that you would like to bring to our conversation this morning?
Well, I don't really have a lot of closing thoughts, but the main thought is that if we plan anything, as they say, if you don't plan anything, you plan to fail. So just like we put in a 5-year plan for our company, or we plan for our financial success, we need to plan for our marriage success as well.
And we plan to get together here on the weekend edition of Community Focus, because you and I have been in communication with one another leading up to this day. And let me just say, William, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation this morning. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And as I typically say, no goodbyes, which is an open invitation to hopefully us getting together on a future program. So again, I want to welcome you to the Community Focus family.
Thank you, and I certainly hope to come back again.
I hope you do too. Thank you very much. Minister William Edward Turner. Again, the book is The Divorce Prevention Guide, Marriage Without Divorce. Thank you, William, again for your great company. Likewise for you, family, as always. I really appreciate what our public affairs show brings here to this very radio station. We have a chance to sit down and really engage in some informative information. Hopefully what you have been able to hear, you can apply within your own homes, your place of work, where you worship, things of that nature. So again, just thank you for your great listenership and the time that you take and spend with us by tuning in to this weekend edition of our Public Affairs show. So indeed, no goodbyes, just until next time. for the weekend edition of Community Focus. Until then, have a great weekend, be safe, enjoy your weekend, and do take care.